The Lekker Rugby Pod instant reaction with Harry Jones, only on Megafoon Rugby.
Welcome to the Lekker Rugby Pod, not instant reaction, because we were kept waiting for ages at Loftus. We just got home just now. Harry and I got this impromptu reaction, if you want to call it that. Harry, I'm a very happy man. I mean, you can hear my voice is almost gone, so that was a good day. Linda wasn't such a happy chappy after that game, but she graciously conceded defeat. So your thoughts?
Other than Via, congratulations, all Bulls. Commiserations, all Sharks. The Bulls beat the Sharks because they didn't slip and fall 3 times like the Sharks kickers did. They kicked smarter. They evened that up. Basically, it went from a 17-4 deficit on regained kicks to a 4-all-ish. It was basically the same. Neutralized the strike weapons, the aerials. Funneled Andre the Giant right into Marcel and Marcu's arms. Accepted basically the tackling that they did in Munster, 166 tackles. Didn't play for field position necessarily, had about 33% of the field. Did have the ball about 38%. It just invited the Sharks to play rugby. And there was a point after that sort of middle patch where the Sharks did pretty well, that the Sharks were stagnant. They were out of solutions, and they just sort of played themselves into oblivion. The best 9 on the pitch was Ambrose Papier, and he, for me, was the best back by a long shot. I'm not diminishing anything David Creel did or Sebastian de Klerk. I just thought that Ambrose Papier, he ran the game, and it was up to him to run the game because the 10s, in a way, sometimes had some off moments. The best forwards, I would have had to go to 5 guys, but probably my friend Kubas Visa was where I'd probably go. And then beyond him, there was a solid cohort of people who just gave everything. What was Jake's mood in the presser?
What do you think?
All smiles.
Yeah, very happy, very reflective almost. One thing Ken Borland said, interesting thing that he noticed after the games that the Bulls players didn't celebrate overly much. It was a bit subdued, no lapse of honor or anything. And Jake said he likes that. That means because they haven't won anything. They haven't even won the conference. So he liked that. The fact that they're actually realizing that next week is when they can start, doing laps of honor. So rubbing it in or something. He liked that kind of thing. Otherwise, he was, like I said, fairly reflective. I asked him specifically about, which I'm not allowed to talk about until Monday, about next week. Unfortunately, there's an embargo on that. But in terms of what John Plumtree said, the Sharks' attack wasn't firing, and that's because of the Bulls' defense. The Bulls' defense was that good. They were either playing deep when they had momentum or playing shallow when they had no momentum. The Sharks being forced to play like that. And I asked him specifically about Andre being channeled, the words that you used there. And he said, yes, he spoke to Adolf this week. They had a plan for him. They knew he was coming. He warned Adolf Foster to go buy himself a crash helmet because he's going to need it. And lo and behold, it happened. So they did work that out. Your questions were spot on as usual, and I passed them out a little bit there. So lots of people had very intelligent questions to ask.
That's awesome. One thing that made the Sharks have to catch the game was the score, of course. Scoreboard pressure is the most real thing in rugby. And so like going up quickly on top, it reversed some of the problems in the 2 losses of the year. In the 2 losses of the year, there wasn't a clear separation. Yes, there was scrum supremacy in the 2 losses, but that was countervailed by the kick regains and the fact that the cards came. This game, the cards came as well. But there was just a little bit difference. The kicks, were parity. The scoring chances that were given were taken, and they were few and far between. But there was surgical operation. Even you see Papier making a break, finding Kubas Visa in space. Kubas being very patient, timing, and then giving. And then you knew at that point that Creel was away. Same thing with a 35-meter pass in the first 10 minutes by Papier to Seb. De Klerk he had a lot to do, of course, but that pass found him in such a good position. In the beginning, it was kind of weird because Willie was bad Willie again. He was naughty Willie. He threw some very strange passes, did some very strange things. And so in a way, I just felt like Ambrose kind of said, I'm going to actually run this game. Wilson and I, but really Papier took over. There were 3-man chases on the kicks. There was even one 4-man chase.
Okay.
Didn't get the 4th man there. Yeah. But there were scraps. There was times when Jeff chased. There was times when Nortje actually chased probably 5 or 6 kicks in the game that I saw. There were also some scraps, and so there were times when a guy like Vessels was in that scrap team, and he was doing up the scraps, and he picked up Mapimpi one time and set him down. There was a lot of pressure on the Sharks, so a lot of their offloads I thought were scrambled. Going up with that lead, I think really helped, because going up 12-0 with that kind of karma that was kind of biting the Sharks, because both Hendricks or Boys didn't seem like they had it. It just felt like there was a big pressure on the mindset of the Sharks. 2 weekends in a row, they would have had to have performed a miracle, get out of jail, and they just didn't have it this day. The other thing I was thinking about is that Lucanio arm was way off the pace. And there were moments in time when you really thought Lorenzo, in the same situation, would have been able to catch that, stop that, and reverse that. It wasn't just not seeing breaks for the Bulls, it was not seeing gaps in the Bulls. And so there was not an ability to capitalize on it. The Andre obviously was just carrying like a Trojan, but I think he did get funneled into the danger zone of Marcel Marcoux. Then we had that spate of yellow cards, which threatened to change the whole narrative, and could have changed the whole narrative. Because when you have three yellow cards in that short a time, and you have some poor chases, because it's hard to chase kicks with a 3-man chase when you're down a man, then down 2 men, because then who's going to come back, on the return kick? So at 15-3, there was this period of time where it just felt like the Bulls had to stand firm, to resist. Cameron's yellow card at 36 minutes for suplexing Sia, sort of moment of madness. There was about a 4-minute period of time where the Sharks spent in the red zone, and then there was a David Creel pilfer of all things. There was kick regains both sides, 2-2. There was a yellow card then to Marcel, and yet then Ox was held up in the red zone. And so I think at that point in time, you thought this is probably the Bulls' day. And then the second half starts, and Cameron comes back on and gets injured in what looks like a terrible thing, like he killed his leg.
Hamstring, and he's out for next week.
Yeah, and he felt like he was in extreme pain, and he's the kind of athlete that has to be able to stretch. So obviously he goes off, and it just felt like Marcoux was the perfect tool for the job. Like almost he fit this game better than Cam did, because he doesn't mind traffic. He doesn't mind things going wild. He doesn't mind just being a tackle machine. He wasn't looking for offloads. Marcoux was just saying, okay, so now I'm going to try to reverse people. I'm trying to pick them up and move them, take them back where they came from, as Andre Pretorius says. So sort of at 45 minutes, you felt like this could work. And then suddenly the Sharks find that blind side. And the blind side had been open all game, but no one found it. But with the overlaps being on both sides of any set piece, scrum, ruck, that it just opened up like the sea. And that hooker try that went in, consolidating the try that Mapimpi had scored, and now you're 15-13, and you're wondering, is it just a matter of kicks? I mean, if Hendricks brothers had made some of the kicks, then that scoreline right there would have been very difficult. Then that's when the Bulls decided to go on phase plays. One of the few sustained phase attacks they went on, and they pull Mchunu off sides. And then Johannes slots one at 18-13. That 5-point gap at 56 and a half minutes was crucial, because that set up the narrative for that final 23 minutes. So what's going to happen next? And that's exactly when Marco's pilfer happened. That's exactly when Kanan Moody won his most important aerials. That's exactly when the Sharks' attack started to stagnate and then slow down and then become nothing. There was also a moment where there was just a futility, and I felt like the Sharks drooped, and right then it was Bulls, Papier, to Kurbas, to Creel, 25-13, and you felt like this thing is over if the Bulls will just keep their shape. Johannes also used a full shot clock, and on TV, I don't know about the grounds, but on TV it felt like he was over.
1 second.
The TV had him over, but the ref's voice was in our ears, and it was saying you still had 2 seconds and then 1 second. And at that moment, I just thought, okay, 70 minutes in, you've got 10 minutes to glory. You've got that crucial 12-point lead, kill time, but don't go into your shell. And then Johannes almost puts Devon in. Devon, I think, probably probably could have just put his shoulder in and driven, done one recycle. Probably did try to do too much. Because at 75 minutes, which is what happened after that, it just felt the Sharks were too slow to score, and they got from 18 to 16 to 15 meters out. Then they plugged into 13. Chichuka brothers, Pepsi Bullet, Buthelezi, 10 meters, 5 meters, and then a scrum at 78 minutes. And wasn't it really kind of fitting that Andrew Brace, who would not give the Bulls a scrum penalty in the first 3 obliterations, even the 4th annihilation, finally gave them a penalty at the end. And that closed the deal. So at 25-13, 3 tries to 2, a proper victory using 38% of the ball and really tackling 166 times. Like I said, it's a classic case of playing your opponent exactly how you should. The Sharks are not comfortable with that much ball. They're not even comfortable with that much red zone attack. They prefer to keep both scores down. If they had kept the Bulls down to sort of that 15, 17 area, there might have been a different outcome. I still don't understand why you guys are getting so many cards. And of course, that's not going to work against Leinster. So going into next week, there's a whole different game plan, and you have to do everything different. Leinster is not the Sharks. In fact, if you had to play 2 teams back to back, I don't know if there's any different teams in the URC, for example, than Leinster and the Sharks. What should buoy the hopes of the Bulls is, we've talked about this, the ability to win on the road, the history of beating Leinster in Dublin, no fear, red hot go. At this time, of the underdogs for real. They're not hot underdogs, they're not massive underdogs, but they are the underdogs if the game is played in Dublin. And across this weekend, we saw the rise of the power teams, the Blues overcoming the Chiefs, the Crusaders putting the Reds away, just bullying them. Bath taking care of Bristol. It's a high, wide attack team, Bristol. Bath just plays right in between the trams. The Tigers seeing off Sale. Both those are power teams, but Leinster Tigers are a little bit more powerful. And then you come across to the URC where Leinster just, dealt with Glasgow and said, you're not big enough, you're not strong enough, and you're not ready for us. So I think this season of postseason playoffs lays out in a way that's helpful for the Bulls. If the ifs are this, scrum superiority has to be turned into penalties. It cannot just be completion of scrum and success percentage. The only successful scrum is when you have the ball, you have the penalty advantage, and you still have the ball. That is the thing you want to have, because you can play with that for a minute, 45 seconds. Refs will give you all that play. And then you come back, either slot your penalty or go to the corner. Right now, it seems like it's almost like the Bulls are victims of their own success. Everyone is expecting them to obliterate the scrum, and then they just have to sort of like super obliterate them. So pre-game, a lot of chatting with refs, probably submissions, videos, make sure that there's clear understanding of Andrew Porter and how he scrums in, how his bum is always perpendicular to the scrum, how he is a known cheater in scrums. With all of his strength, he just has never developed a proper scrum technique. And so prime the refs to give the penalty. The other thing is, it has to be this good on the kick chase. You cannot allow the Leinster counter attack, the Leinster kick attack, to have kicking on their own terms. And in the second half, the Bulls really did get tired, assisted by the fact they were playing down 2 men sometimes, and that kick chase really fell off. Had Fassi, Mapimpi held on to the ball, not spilled the final pass, not spilled it in contact as much, it could have been trouble. But it was really nice to see the crowd, the South African flavor of a derby. There's no derby I'd prefer to see in the world than this kind of derby. It's just incredibly ferocious. Like I said, it's a wrestle in the night, in the mud for a knife. It's not pretty. No one's whining at the end. Everyone can wink at each other and it's okay. And the great spirit of, leave it on the field. The other thing that is always a worry about these is Bok futures. So Cameron Hanekom goes down, you wonder. Even Etzebeth not playing in the game probably made me feel the best on the whole Bok story of anyone. I don't want anyone playing around with someone's head at this stage in such a great career. So let's get him all the way fit. Let's not put him in there against people he doesn't have to play against. Let's get him all the way good. But there's some creaking old Boks. There's a there's a handful of people in this list now that we have to worry about. Bongi doesn't look like the old
Mm.
Bongi. He's just reaching. He's lunging for the ball now, not able to keep his feet under him. Lucanio Arm, as we've said, although there's lots of other options there, his own teammate Ethan Hooker looks like someone who could play at any level. He's the guy that I saw today that just seemed like he stands out. He knows where the ball is going to be. He's difficult to put down, and just got a way about him. So awesome victory. We won't take too much credit, but we did definitely see some of these threads, and they did play out, and it kind of gave me a chuckle.
I wanted to ask you about the kicking because we asked Jake about the kicking that the Bulls did so well, and he said, yes, we must understand where it was structured play, and Moody took the ball very nice and looks good, and they were very good at it. But he says, unstructured kicking, they were very, very poor. What did you see there?
Yeah, that's true. I think everything that was set up was good, and anytime it was in the course of general play, there was a lot of waste. There was several nothing burger kicks that went right into the pocket, into the swing zone of Fassi. There was a couple times where kicks were because they didn't know what else to do. When the kicks were on and they were on the Bulls' terms and you had proper setups, it was great. I was texting Jake last week about the fact that the Bulls were not kicking enough. I'm just talking about sheer meters, sort of the French model of like, maybe we'll play rugby, maybe we won't, but it's much better to play rugby in the right spots, and it's much better for us to not play too much rugby. So I looked at the final, the meters kicked, the Bulls kicked more by about 786 meters kicked total to 757. That's a good shape. That's the shape I'd prefer to see against Leinster. I don't think it's going to make any sense to run into jackals, pilferers, known breakdown artists, trying to build 7 phases from your own 30-meter line. You're not going to get there. The chances of you scoring from your own 22 or your own 30-meter line on consecutive phases, extremely low. Can you score from there in 2 or 3 phases sometimes when you get a line break, like the Papier to Kubas to Kriel? Yeah, that's when they do. But don't labor on it. Don't keep building it. So you're going to have a kick chase game against Leinster. And the good news is they're open to it. They're not tremendous in the air if you can sort of steer away from James Lowe and Jordy Barrett. There are people you can have. Kanan Moody, I think, can win some of those aerials straight up against man for man. Billy actually did really well in the air today as well. Sebastian Leclerc is always giving away a few inches to everyone. So it's difficult for him to win those. But David Creel, you can send, and like we said, the locks. I wasn't the only one talking about Kubas Visa having a possibility of being a big 7 at the test level. But I think when you see him in flight, he's a natural runner. He reminds me a bit of how you sometimes wondered if Bakis was really an athlete. Was he just an enforcer? Was he a bully? And when he was in space, Bakis was looking good. So Kubas Visa has that same kind of fluid motion. Also, a word out to every single captain being carded, I think. Like if you were a captain for the Bulls, you got carded.
Yeah.
That's interesting approach. And so at some point the referee was just walking around and saying, so who's your
That's interesting. We asked Jake about that. He said, because Ruan was also off at that stage, because Ruan did offer a card, but he went off for injury. And then Marcel was carded. And then Johan Grobler became captain, and he was captain earlier. And Jake said that was part of his strategy to build captains. Remember, we talked about it during the course of the season.
Yeah.
So that panned out for him. I wanted to ask you the big surprise yesterday, of course, was selection of Goosen to start, never mind sitting on the bench after all for his career was basically over. That didn't work out too badly. I think that went well. Then Keegan Johannes came on and just, impressed once again.
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder. I wonder about the ability. I thought Goosen gave away some penalties as well, some silly ones twice at the ruck when he was playing the 9 one time. He got involved in rucks sometimes. So if the reason why you're going with the wisdom and the experience is they're always going to be like avoiding mistakes, and then you have mistakes anyway, I'd take the young guy who makes mistakes but has another gear and the ability to do things that I don't think at this stage in his career Goosen can do anymore. I also don't like sometimes starting with a more conservative approach. I think against Leinster, it's going to have to be one hot go from the beginning, from the jump. Find holes, beat them with athleticism. I think there's things Johannes can do that will trouble Sam Prendergast, for example. Better lateral movement, quicker side to side, make him a tackler. We know that Sam is one of the worst tacklers in World Rugby. So Johannes can exploit that maybe better than Huijsen. But that being said, Jake's he's the captain of the ship. Nobody's ever going to question someone from putting in the most experienced playmaker. That makes sense. If you have Billy, Huijsen, and Papier, that's 3 box. People who've been playing for a very long time and seen a lot of things. But there's something about Johannes that I really like in the big moments. I even like his misses at goals. That sounds funny, but there's a way you miss where you think that's still a good strike. The ball has a good shot at it. It always looks like it's got a shot. I like that. When people miss by a country mile, I go, "Ooh, wait, what's happening? What happened to your mind there?"
Interesting thing about him for me is the fact that he can eat the gap. And he did it last week and he did it this week again. And that makes him dangerous, unpredictable. I like that. I mean, against a guy like Prendergast who can't tackle, but also has an eye for a gap, if you think about it. That's going to be a very interesting matchup if they start together, I suppose. But I rate Keegan. I've said it before. And at the end of the day, if both those players are injured, we can always let Kobus Wiese fly off. You mentioned that as well.
Well, I mean, I liked his distribution. He was calm in that moment. A lot of big tight forwards are going to mess that up. They're either going to try to do a miracle or offload or try to put toe to ball, miss it completely. No, he was great. He did the double pump and then he put it right in the pocket.
Yeah. Anyway, I have to get this out now. So thanks for that quick reaction. Appreciate it, and I enjoyed it. It was very stressful, but yeah, here we are. Thanks, man.
Yes.